Have you ever made something you regretted making or said something you regretted saying? Well, you're in luck because I have been in this boat many, many times. So today I'll be talking about some helpful tips for how we can move forward after regret. My name is Guillory. I'm a comic book creator. And the purpose of my channel is to encourage, inspire, and I hope give insight into the strange world of comics. Let's get into it. Hey folks, welcome back for another episode. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. So this week's episode is going to be sort of an addendum, an add-on to last week's episode. If you tuned in, or even if you didn't tune in, last week's episode was about how do we stay true to ourselves? How do we make things in a culture of collaboration, a culture of clients, work for hire? How do we navigate that while also trying to stay true to our deepest, closest held values? And immediately after I released it, I started getting back some really cool feedback in the comments section. So thanks for everyone who chimed in. But the feedback was essentially this. These are some really great tips, Rob. But what if we've already done things that we regret? If we've already made things that we regret? And what's the next step? What do we do now? And I thought that is fantastic. I thought that is a fantastic thing to talk about because I completely relate to it, and I think a lot of people would relate to it. I'll speak for myself. I've made things in the past that I am completely not proud of, many of which have never even been published, and that's probably for the best. But when I came into comics, when I started really pursuing this as a job, I was in a very dark place, and I was in a very human place working through a lot of things of the past, which meant I was making a lot of work very haphazardly, and it was very destructive. And flat out, I hurt people. I hurt people all around me that I actually cared about because I was essentially this hot mess that was flailing around trying to work through things in my art, never once giving thought of what I was making, what kind of effect that would have on people. So as a result, there's a broad swath of my early career that I'm not proud of, filled with work that I'm never gonna show. So I relate to this. So today, when I'll be talking about this topic of moving forward, I'm mostly working from that. I'm working from how I've moved forward from these negative things I've done in my past, these things that were flat out wrong. So how do we move forward? So the first thing I have done was I had to own it. I had to really own what I'd done. I had to own that it wasn't anyone else's fault that I made what I made, the choices that I made. It was me. I made the decisions I made. I knew what I was doing to some degree. And the destructive results of it, that's on me. That's not on anyone else. So I think part of it is this sort of taking ownership, but also grieving it. Grieving that there's a part of me that did that, that was basically capable of doing something like that. And I think what's helpful for me is honestly not just working through this on my own, but working through this with other people, working through this with even a counselor. I think I'm a huge fan of therapy and getting any type of professional help in these things. Getting a good counselor who is actually able to speak into your life in a positive way is a great tool to work through these things, to really begin the process of owning and grieving these things. So we have to own this as part of our story. But next, I think what we have to do is we have to acknowledge that it is only part of the story, because a human tendency tends to be we take this one part of our story and we lift it up. We zoom in on it and we make it all of our story. It basically blocks out all the other pieces of our life and our identity, and we make this one mistake we made 20 years ago, this one bad creative decision, whatever personal decision, we blow it up until it's everything. I think we have to zoom out again and put that mistake, that choice in its proper place. That work that we made that we regret, we have to put it in its proper place. It's just one part of the story. It is not the entirety of who you are. It's not the entirety of your career, your life. It's just one piece. So I think having a healthy distance from it is I think it's the best play you could make. And then from there, I think you have to make amends. In my case, my work was hurting other people. So I think what I had to do then was to reach out to the people I'd hurt and make it right as much as I could. So for me, what that looked like after I was coming out of that dark season was I was actively emailing people randomly. I mean, just out of nowhere. They were complete. I mean, some of these people I hadn't spoken to in years. I would email them randomly, just apologizing and saying, I messed up. I did something that I regret. I did something I should not have done that hurt you, and I apologize. And to a person, every one of those people was, first of all, shocked that I emailed them out of nowhere, but also they were grateful and they were thankful. And to a person, every one of them forgave me, and I was able to move forward with a kind of lightness. I was able to unload those things. Maybe in your case, it's not about necessarily wounding other people. Maybe you need to make amends with yourself. Maybe there is a level of shame that you're carrying because what you did last year, 20 years ago, whatever, like this professional decision you made, you put something out that you feel does not represent who you are and the kind of creator you want to be, the kind of person you want to be. So there you have to, rather than seeking external forgiveness, I think you're going to have to forgive yourself. There's going to have to be a process of giving yourself grace, because the reality is every person we're all just working through life. We're all just trying to make sense. We're taking in all this data. We're trying to make sense of things, trying to make decisions that make tomorrow better than yesterday. But us as creatives, we have kind of this unique thing where we're basically taking in all this data and then we're pouring it out into a visual thing, and we're pouring it out into the art. And that is sort of dangerous. You put it out there, you don't really know what it's going to do. And sometimes it does things that we don't necessarily expect, and we have to live with the results of it. But that's a human thing. We have to give ourselves the grace to acknowledge that we made a particular choice, however long ago in the past. We made the choice, we made the best possible choice we could have made in the circumstances. But maybe it was a mistake. Maybe there were better choices to have made. But we just have to forgive ourselves. We have to forgive, learn, and try to do better. So I think what we have to do, what I had to do was I had to destroy all the what ifs, because the temptation, at least for me, is to then look at the past and kind of ask what if on everything. What if I'd done this? What if I'd drawn this differently? What if I'd written this differently? What if I'd made this different business decision? What will my life or my career look like? And I think we have to chop that off. For me, I've had to basically anytime that kind of rears up, I have to chop it off immediately, because it's an exercise in futility. It's not going to change your current situation. It's just going to keep you trapped in a past that never even happened. It's like a multiverse of what ifs, of potential realities, but none of which they're not going to happen. You're just kind of constructing this in your brain. So we have to cut off the what ifs. And I think next, what I had to do was I had to flip the story I was telling myself. I had to flip my focus. So rather than focus on all of the mistakes I'd made creatively, personally, I had to take myself out of the past regret and start focusing on present gratitude. I had to start focusing on, instead of lamenting what I didn't have, I had to start being thankful for what I did have, which meant just re-engaging and looking at my present life through the lens of gratitude, and realizing that I have a pretty awesome life. I have a blessed life, and everyone's life is going to be different. But I do think, particularly here in America, we tend to have things to be thankful for, like a lot to be thankful for. So I think flipping the script, looking at gratitude, I think that mindset shift can start to set us up for the next step, which for me, the next step was sort of taking the lesson, looking at the story, looking at my life story, and looking at what I had made that I wasn't proud of, and looking at what I learned from it, looking at the entirety of the experience, and basically taking the lesson I'm supposed to take from this experience, the screw up, and basically putting it in my backpack and using it as a tool for later, not just for myself, but for other people. So for me, what I tend to do is I tend to think on the past a good bit. But it's not in a lamenting kind of shaming kind of way. I tend to look back at my past, at the things I've done in the past, my life, in a way that I'm sort of remembering the story, but I'm also seeing the progress. I'm keeping in mind where I am today while looking back at the past and noting there's been growth. I can see the positive growth, and I can be thankful for that. So I think there's a good type of remembering. And I think remembering where we've come from, remembering what we've overcome, remembering even our screw ups, and learning from them, I think is a powerful thing that's good for us. It's something, it helps us to help other people as well. Basically, this entire YouTube channel is mostly that. It is mostly me going through my experiences, my screw ups, trying to give it to you guys in a way that is helpful to you, to help you to hopefully avoid some of the pitfalls I'd fallen into. And the last thing I think is just making the next thing, which for me, it's going to look different for everybody. Making the next thing, whether that's drawing the next page, writing the next page, writing the next whatever, just doing the next thing on your journey, I think is an act. It is a physical act that separates you from the past, because the temptation is to be trapped in your past, to be trapped in your regret, the regret that you did whatever you did. And I think just doing the next thing breaks us out of that cycle and brings us into the present and into the future. I think that simple act of just doing the next thing, whatever that is for you. For me, my next step today is going to be going to that drawing desk and drawing my next page. That's the next step for me. I think that simple act is a powerful thing. So that's basically my process. I'm starting to think about what this episode is really. And I think it is a process episode, but it's not just a work process episode. This process of forgiving ourselves, of making things that aren't the best, and then forgiving ourselves for it, trying again. It's an endless cycle. We're going to be doing this the rest of our lives. For me, creatively, I'm going to be doing this my entire life. And even outside of this office, in my family, friendships, I'm going to be doing this all the time. There has to be a process of, again, experimenting, trying. When we all try, because we're human, it's never going to come out perfect. It's going to have unintended side effects. What we can do, though, is we can keep short accounts. We can apologize when we screw up. We can learn the lesson, try to do better, and keep going forward. I think that's the key to sort of moving forward from these past regrets and letting go of these past screw ups that we all have. I certainly have plenty. I'll probably have more in the future. This is just a life process that I'm just working through. So I hope that's helpful in some kind of way. This is sort of a unorthodox episode, but I really feel like, especially after hearing from some of the folks who chimed in from last week's episode, I think this is something that I felt very strongly about sharing. It's something I have, as I said, walked through in my own process in my own life. So I hope you were able to get something from it. Let me know in the comments, again, where I can help you. Anywhere I can help, let me know. I'm here for you. Like, share, subscribe. As always, I'll see you next week. I hope that this week is a productive one. I hope it's, as always, I hope it's peaceful. So I will see you next week.